Welcome to Iron and Ceremony, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
Hello everyone and welcome to Iron and Ceremony present Librarius Omnis. This is part 2 of our review of Legion, and we're still in the first part of the book, which is Reptile Summer. I'm John, and as always, I'm joined by Shane. Hello mate, how are you?
Good, thank you mate, very good. Looking forward to this second part of the part 1.
Yeah. Part 1 is very expansive, and I think in the first video we've opened up a lot of questions and we've got zero answers apart from a couple of names of characters, and we don't even know where they all are at the minute.
No, we know we've been introduced to a lot, so you know some of the the Chiliad? Yeah, yep. some of the Chiliad. John Grammaticus, the Uxors, we're aware of those. Some of the Alpha Legion, who are all Alfarius.
Yeah,
apparently
we've met Alfarius. We've met Alfarius and the other 3 Alfarius.
We have, but I think crucially towards the end, we've got John Grammaticus being able. You know, he's met some of the Alpha Legion, and so has comparisons with the rest of them. So that maybe he can start telling them apart. He won't know who Alfarius is, but he will know who he is.
Yes, that makes complete sense. Right, so we'll get into it, I think. We've got a little bit of an update to our own channel, though. If those keen-eyed viewers on YouTube will have noticed the extra logo at the bottom of our page. For Patreon, which we've recently become members of. So if you are enjoying what we're doing and you'd like to support us and show your support, head over to Patreon and you can subscribe to us for £5 a month, just to say, here you go guys, and we'll say thank you by adding your name to the credits of the videos that we do. If you notice, we'll put, if you want your Instagram or your social media, we'll stick you on there, or if you just like your name on there as our way of saying thank you. And that'll keep us ticking over, and hopefully help us get some more equipment and help us improve the channel and the content we're bringing to you. And then, Shane, we've also become affiliates to Element Games.
We have indeed, yeah. So if you're looking to purchase any hobby supplies, they're very good. We use them ourselves. I think that's where Dave got his battle map from, which hopefully you guys will eventually see on some of the battle reports. So if you're looking to buy any hobby supplies, if you're about to buy anyway, maybe consider doing it through our affiliate link. Again, it gives us a nice little kickback. It tells Element Games that we've sent you, and it just means that we can put more into the channel, and hopefully get you guys more content more regularly.
Yeah, cool. So awesome. Enough admin. Let's quickly get ourselves up to speed. So those of you who are watching will remember we've got our cheat sheet up now, and we've got the cast list, so we can remember who is who and try and help ourselves keep track.
Indeed.
And we joined the Genome 5 Chiliad on Nurth 2 years before the heresy started, where we were introduced to our hetmen Sonica and our other hetmen Bronzy, who are the hetmen for the dancers and the, what was the second one? My mind's gone.
Wasn't the clowns, was it?
No.
There are clowns. Who was it? The Jokers.
The Jokers, that's it. Well, we're off to a good start. Yes. And obviously, so we've got those. We've got Hon and Moo, who is the Uxa for the Jokers, and Roxana she was the Uxa for the dancers, or she's just another Uxa, isn't she?
She is the Uxa, but where was she? No, she was with she was leading the like Hurtado Bronzy and Sonica.
Yes.
When Sonica's dancers were attacked.
Yes. So they were attacked, making their way to a checkpoint by the Nurthine warriors who used their air magic to ambush them, which we found out quite soon after that it was a trap laid out by the Alpha Legion, who used them as bait, so they could actually eventually take Tel Utan. And then we moved on to Visages, where the survivors were recuperating, and a body was brought to their attention by the Medicae, who was disguised as a dancer, but we found out was not a dancer via Sonica, obviously knowing his men, recognizing that's not it, and that was the first sort of alarm bells to be raised. They made contact with their Uxar Hon and Mu and arranged to go to an RV point, which Bronzy volunteered to take the body, and he went with another surviving hitman from the Clowns, which was Shiban. Got the body to the RV point, and at the RV point was not anybody they expected to see. It was the Alpha Legion, who then assassinated Shiban, and I believe that was sort of a cliffhanger for what happened to Bronzy from there.
Yeah, so we don't. Well, I was going to say, did we find out that the Alpha Legion actually assassinated him at that point? I think we find out in this section that happened, don't we?
No, because he come round, because I think he had the gun pointed at Bronzy, and Shaban ran around the corner.
Oh yeah, that was
the Alpha Legion, and then he got absolutely obliterated from the spot.
Quite right.
And then we meet John Grammaticus here, I believe. Who is returned from his first trip to Monlo Harbour. He's debriefing his Uxor Roxana. They have a bit of a kiss and a cuddle, and then John says, right, I've got to go back in and get some more information, which he does in disguise. He's obviously basically, what was it you called him? He's a
neither of us could remember the name. So he's a psyker, but his specialization is in linguistics, and like, so he's able to copy. He can instantly tell where you're from, what accent you're speaking, and that extends to Xenos races as well. And he can copy it, and he can use those kind of powers along with his latent psychic ability to effectively Jedi mind trick anyone into thinking that he is who he says he is, even if he's not that person at all. So he uses his like linguistic skills to enable him to do that.
So we joined him. He went back into Monlo Harbour, which is, I think it's like the last stronghold of the Nurth. And while he was there, another powerful psyker intervened, played some tricks on him. He luckily stumbled across the Alpha Legion, who he's been sent by the Cabal to meet with and set up a meeting between the two. But before anything could really go on, and they realised actually there's a third psychic power involved, which has trapped them both. And then they were basically attacked by a tidal wave of lizards. And as they made their escape, they were attacked by a big crocodile and another big lizard, dragon sort of thing. And they were able to kill these. And then the surviving sort of members of this Alpha Legion party and John Grammaticus have all run to escape the harbour. And we left off as John was running away and lost sight of the others, but he kept running, and that was where we finished. So that brings us up to chapter 5. I don't know. There we go. That brings us up to chapter 5, Monlo Harbour, 3 days later. So kicking it off, we meet another character now. We meet Lord Commander Namatjira, who is commander of the 670th Expedition, one of the finest army commanders within the Great Crusade, with 103 successful campaigns under his belt, and he's currently in the war room, demanding to know why they haven't taken Monlo Harbour yet, and why there is an unearthly screaming sound coming from the city, which no one can answer.
He's not best pleased. He's not happy. It's like they talk about it, and he's an interesting character, is Namatjira, because you don't really like warm to him, but at the same time, he's not. At least when he's originally described and early on, he's not an incompetent leader. Like he's certainly, he's been able to do or deliver compliance in multiple different theatres before, so he's not entirely incompetent, but he's also not particularly sympathetic, and yeah, you can tell he's not particularly happy with the situation. No. They say early on that normally he likes to conduct his operations from in orbit, and that the fact that he's actually come down to the ground to Monlo Harbour to see what's going on is a big deal. Yeah. And I think we also, because this is where Roxana and Hon and Mu meet each other, and they're like Hon and Mu's, she's kind of quite glad that she hasn't been involved in any of the activity in Monlo Harbour, because she's like, at least he's not going to be able to shout at me, and she can also sense that Roxana, because they both being Uxors, they can both set or have this natural psychic ability, but she's much younger than Roxana, and so she can kind of sense that not only is her powers are dwindling, but also that she's maybe keeping something, or she's not being entirely open with Namatjira.
No, exactly. And like touching on what you said, normally they like to write these commanders as sort of lazy, incompetent. They just happen to have got in charge through politics. But yeah, he's got a background. Like, he's not just a commander. He was a formidable warrior once, because he was originally a veteran of the Lucifer Blacks, which are his bodyguard. They're pretty much don't have a real military bearing anymore, other than they're his sort of his heavies.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So originally it was Commander Dev was in charge of this mission on the harbour, but it's taken them 8 months, and they made no movement. And like you say, he's come down to turn the screws, and they have their meeting. He kicks off, and then afterwards he sort of asks them, the two Uxors, to come and have a private word. And as they walk in, a couple of other commanders are walking out after getting their ears completely chewed off, and they sort of go in, and Roxana gives a bit of an update on her intel with her spy that she has, who's gone back into the harbour, and she relays the information that he gave to her. And again, as we know, he didn't really tell her too much.
And obviously they're still referring to him as Konig Henneke,
yes,
who everyone seems to know, because I think Namatjira, I believe it's Namatjira, he says like, oh yeah, his intelligence is normally good. Yeah. So they're like, oh, okay, fine. If it's him that's in there, that's fine.
Yeah, and obviously, so Honan's been invited because she was part of the success of taking Telutan, and obviously Namatjira knows how it happened, and he reveals now to the rest of his sort of command unit and says, how did you do this? And Honomu says, well, this was with the help of the Alpha Legion, which obviously then shocks everybody, because nobody else seemed to know there were Astartes on the planet.
Yep.
And he says he's actually got a meeting with Librarius, and he's going to help coordinate the attack that's going to bring the Nurthing people to their knees and how to destroy them. and he's glad now that the ball can get rolling in their favour. And like I think you touched on in the last video, he's glad that he's been sent some Astartes help, but he's not happy that it's the Alpha Legion.
No, I believe they name check Gilliman. I think it's Gilliman that's actually called out in the terms that again, Namatjira is he must be senior enough, because he makes mention of having spoken to at least if you include Librarius, like at least 3 Primarchs in Gilliman as well as Horus, and he does say that him and Gilliman kind of agree that the Alpha Legion don't conduct war in the honourable way.
No.
So it's interesting that you kind of get, again, it's that what's going on between the Primarchs and the Legions and stuff like that. There is a there's untrust between all of them to a degree.
Yeah, he's also he's not impressed that I'm not too sure how he'd become aware. Probably the Alpha Legion sort of tipped their hat to Lutan, but he's not happy that they've been on this planet without his knowledge and operating. And he's like, well, this is my battlefield. I should know everything. It doesn't matter if you're Astartes or not. You still answer to me. And he actually has some suspicion that they're partly to blame with the delay in taking this planet. So yeah, he's a bit unimpressed so far.
Yeah.
So he dismisses everybody, and he then says to his captain of the Lucifer Blacks, Dinas Cheney, Chain, and they've both picked up that Roxana didn't seem to be telling them everything through her body language, that she was holding something back. So he says to Dinas, you are going to keep her under scrutiny for now. We're going to keep our eyes on her. And they're not the only ones who sort of caught onto her, because once they're outside, Hon and Mu has also realised, and obviously she's got the ability, the psycho ability as well, so she's definitely picked something up. And she catches up with her and says, is there something you want to tell me?
Yeah.
You can confide in me. But Roxana says, no, there's nothing you need to know. So she goes back to her own aides, and she gets one of them to go and find her gene whip, which is like a sergeant major, where they're the disciplinarians I would sort of equate it to. And says, go and get him, because she wants to keep eyes on Roxana as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The gene whips are, as you said, they're there to keep kind of order, and especially with the Chiliad, they talk about it a lot in terms of cleaning up after themselves and keeping things within the unit, and the gene whips are like key to that. And I think at some point, it might be in this chapter, it might be the next one, where they kind of say that, had it been in different times, the role of the gene whip would be more of like a political officer, and it's there for that reason. Like it's a combination of like discipline and morale, and so the gene whips do seem to kind of operate like we never hear about them being in combat. Let's put it that way. They seem to operate, at least in this book, more behind the lines, almost investigating the rest of the unit.
Yeah. And it doesn't come off as a very popular character as we go on either.
No.
So she says to her aides, go and get Boone. And at the same time, one of the aides says that there is a hetman waiting to speak to her. And it is Sonica from the dancers.
Yeah.
So she goes off into the waiting room where he's been, and he's a bit of a mess. He's clearly been out in rough terrain for a while, unshaved, absolutely minging. And she runs over and gives him a hug, saying, "Oh, I thought you was dead." And she's obviously relieved to see him. And she says, like, she heard that there wasn't any survivors from Visages. So she assumed, that's why she assumed he was dead. And he said some details of how he was able to escape. And he says, well, now I'm here. What's happened to the body that we told you about?
Yeah.
And she says, what body? And he says, the thing that Bronzy voxed to you from Visages. And she literally has no idea what he's talking about. And then it sort of hits him what Bronzy said to him when he was leaving Visages: you're my ace in the hole.
Yeah.
You need to know, you need to stay behind in case something else happens. And obviously now more alarm bells for him. And he's trying to figure out exactly what is going on. And at this point, the Gene Whip Boone walks in, who's also surprised to see Sonica sitting there, and going to his unpopularity straight away. He's more interested to find out how his whole Geno got slaughtered out in the desert, and Sonica's pretty much not happy to talk to him at all.
Well, he plays it up a bit, like, doesn't he? He kind of plays it up like he's got like desert madness or something like that. He's like, I've been in the sun too long. I'm knackered. I don't know what I'm talking about. Just to get out as soon as he can. Yeah,
that's it. He closes down, realizes he doesn't know who to trust, blames it on having too much wine while he's been waiting, and he makes his excuses and gets out of there. So then things turn for Honan and Boone. So she tells him that she's suspicious about Roxana, and she is definitely clouding something with her sept. And like you said, they don't want the Lord Commander to find out because they need to keep their house in order.
Yeah.
And if there's treachery discovered within the Chiliad, then they're all going to suffer. So they need to purge the traitors before they're all purged. And Boone is quite happy with this. He says he's not surprised. All of the Gene Whips have been onto some sort of insurgency recently while they've been on the planet, and he will help find out what's going on. So Roxana, she goes back to her quarters now that everyone's suspicious of her, and as she goes into her bedchamber, John Grammaticus is already there waiting for her, and he apologizes for not letting anyone know that he's back. And again, he's the reason that she's been acting a bit suspicious and not told anyone, because he's been back for 2 days.
Yeah.
And he's asked her, please don't tell anyone I'm here. Because again, he doesn't know who he can trust and what's going on himself, and he needs to hide, because not only has he got some powerful psyker chasing him, he's now run away from the Alpha Legion, which is probably not his wisest move. And she's not happy because she knows that everyone knows that something's going on, and she's risking being executed for helping him.
She does say, doesn't she, that at some point, I think during their conversation, she sort of says, like, this is starting to feel wrong. It's starting to feel like I'm hiding too much.
Yeah. But he's like sort of convinced her that he loves her, and she's sort of going for personal feelings over probably the smart option here.
Yeah.
And he says it's vital that you buy me some time so I can lay low. And he also feels like bad because he's just using her.
He knows he's doing it.
On some level, he loves her, but really it's to protect himself. And he's trying to weigh up his choices, and he can either use her as a sacrifice, get her executed as the traitor while he escapes, or he can tell her the truth and try and escape with her. And he's having a bit of a moral dilemma, which kicks us into chapter 6, Monlo Harbour, the next day. So now we're waiting for the Alpha Legion to arrive, or the Alpharius to arrive anyway.
Yeah.
Outside the palace, there's a full military parade. Anybody who's not on the front lines or an outpost is paraded here. And everybody's here to see the arrival of the Astartes.
Yeah.
And Namatjira's getting dressed up into like some epic ceremonial dress here, like
a peacock cloak and
yeah,
multiple arms. And
he's coming out like Doc Ock, isn't he?
Yeah, all very strange.
Yeah. So yeah, he's sort of armed to the teeth as well. Ceremonial swords and daggers, and like, I think they describe him as looking some sort of ancient Egyptian god. And also present, we've got Hon and Mu, Roxana.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's witnessing it, and then a big ship lands. For some reason, they really like pump it out. It doesn't land near, or it doesn't just sort of turn up. It's a good distance away, and this lone Astartes figure walks, however far it is, along the red carpet, and really makes a show of this. And walks up and meets the Lord Commander. Oh, here you go. So it says it takes 8 minutes for him to walk from his ship to the Lord Commander.
And isn't this the bit where he like, you know, as he's going, he drops his gauntlet and he unclips his helm and just drops that down, and then this is the bit where he gets the knife out, right?
He gets his gladius out, yeah.
That's it, and cuts his hand, and then Namatjira does the same thing, right?
Yeah, and then they have the good old
offering in blood.
Yeah. And then Alpharius pledges his allegiance to Namatjira there.
He does, yeah. Is it Alpharius?
Well, the Astartes we currently believe to be Alpharius, yeah. And so there we go. And he does introduce himself as Alpharius, and
this is true.
Then 2 kilometers away, through a high-powered scope, John Grammaticus is laying on the rooftop watching this all go down, and he doubts as well as us.
He asks himself the same question, doesn't he? He says, "Is it? Is it?"
He can't hear what's being said, but he can lip read pretty well, so he knows what's going on.
Apparently, he can lip read accents, so he can do all of that, and especially because he's looking through an elder long sight, I think they say.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the gifts of the Cabal, which apparently means that it's almost like he's like next to them. He's that close and detailed that he can see it. But apparently, he can lip read accents, which is why he's not sure it's Alpharius, because he's like he said, he doesn't know who Alpharius is, but he knows who he's not. So he's not sure whether this is one of the Astartes that he may have met before. And I think this is the bit where he goes into the detail about how the Alpha Legion, being like the newest legion, and is the Primarch has never revealed his homeworld. So although John is able to John Grammaticus is able to pick up like the accent and what's happening, he's like, he doesn't know whether that's Alpharius because he doesn't know which homeworld Alpharius is from. And although, as he said, he looks like some of the images of Alpharius, he also doesn't look like others. So it's definitely like this blended view of who Alpharius actually is and who he could be. And it's very much like, well, as I said, Secrets and Lies is the subtitle of the book, right?
Yeah.
The Legion and the Primarch have purposely, kept it muddied in terms of who he could possibly be, and all that John Grammaticus can work out is that if the gene theory is correct, which is quite an interesting point in itself, then this Marine could be Alpharius because he does look a bit like Horus and the Emperor.
Yeah,
and that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because he really doesn't handle stress very well, because he's laying here trying to work it out, and then he's laying here also thinking that he's getting frustrated that the Cabal have given him the power of reincarnation, and he just wishes that he'd stayed dead the first time. He just can't be bothered with it.
He's 1,000 years old and he's moaning away.
And he's like reaching out, trying to get an answer from the Cabal and moaning at them, but no one's
they've gone quiet.
Yeah. And you can also feel another psycho, is it Cher? He can feel them reaching out, trying to find where he is.
Yeah, the Alpha Legion one who's completing sweeps. Like, as he said, it's almost like it sweeps, and he has to just be mindful of when these sort of psychic sweeps are moving over.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you've also got, I know they go into it in a minute, but like Dennis Chain is like, he's also like on high alert and running sweeps and stuff like that. And I think it's
right now. You've literally picked up the next sentence. So good estimate.
It's well, basically what he is he John Grammaticus is almost undone by his cleverness in kind of blanking himself. Yeah. Because Dennis Chain, as I said, he's a smart cookie and notices that there's like almost like this blank spot in the security sweeps, and it's like, whereas maybe a standard Imperial soldier, even one of the Chiliad, might have looked at it and gone, well, there's nothing there. He sees it as an anomaly, and so it's like, we should have a look at that because that's a bit sus. Yeah. And then we go from there.
Yeah, there's a reason like he's captain of the Lucifer Blacks, because he isn't like just some nobody either. We get a bit of a background on him. And he was like born on the planet Zaus, another of Terra's lost planets, and again it had been at war so long that it basically decimated its own population to the point that children were recruited into the armies to fight. He was recruited at 11 years old.
Yeah.
And he
took command at 12, I think it was.
Yeah, took command at 12. And by the time he was 13, he was an emotionless veteran of war. So really happy childhood for him. And then as I think the war was about to destroy the planet, the Imperium arrived and
Namatjira brought it to compliance, recognised the warrior, and gave him to, he was the adopted son of one of his generals, wasn't he?
Yeah, basically. And then after a few years, at the age of 18, he became the captain of the Lucifer Blacks, which he's been doing. I don't know if we know how old he is now, but I mean, I would say he's been doing it a long time.
I don't know. What we do know about the Lucifer Blacks is that they were, so like the Chiliad, they were an old Terran unit, but unlike the Chiliad, who have obviously, there's a reason they're called Geno, is they were able to replenish and build their losses back up after the Terran Wars of Unification, whereas the Lucifer Blacks weren't. So they became more of a ceremonial unit who would act as like bodyguards for the likes of Namatjira as master of the, also Lord Commander of the army. So they act as almost like bodyguards and ceremonial units as opposed to actual combat assets.
Yeah. And like I say, so he finds the location using the sensors of the blank spot. And as he gets into position, he pounces expecting to find someone. But all he finds is a piece of paper stuck under a rock with the words "better luck next time" scrawled on it.
Oh, John, what are you doing? What's Grammaticus up to there, eh?
Yeah. So elsewhere, Sonica's having a sleep. He gets woken up by Lon, telling them that they're running late. They're missing the parade. All the other regiments have assembled. And he goes, although there's only 10 dancers left, we should still take our banner and make ourselves known. And so he agrees. He says, right, let's get ready to go. And as he gets up, he finds a small piece of rock from visages under his pillow.
Yep.
That wasn't there when he went to bed. Or he didn't know it was there when he went to bed, and wonders how that got there. And as you mentioned, Grammaticus is now regretting putting the note under the rock, realizing that he's just taunted a very well-trained killer.
Yeah.
And he's made a poor choice.
He couldn't help himself.
Yeah.
He was being too cocky and decided he was going to taunt the captain of the Lucifer Blacks, which is not a smart idea.
No. So he's hightailed it out there. He's making his way back to Roxana's quarters, and as he's getting close, he's sneaking through the shadows and hears one of the Uxor's aides outside of her quarters saying to somebody, "No, you can't come in here. She's not here, so come back later." And he has a look and sees there are 3 robed men asking to get in, and they say, and this guy says that his name is Tinkas. He's a surveyor of fabric for the expedition, and he's come to assess and evaluate all the properties and trying to blag his way in. And Grammaticus reaches out with his psychic ability to try and coerce this aide to turn them away and say, this is not who he says he is, you're being lied to, but it doesn't work. And the aide lets these 3 men in. And the identity of one is Franco Boone, our gene whip, with 2 of his men. And he tells them, right, search the room, we've got 2 minutes to get out of here. And one of the men finds like a dirty canvas jacket on the floor, and the other one goes into the bathroom and finds bowls and cups of water all over the place. And I think we touched on it before, that the way that John speaks to the cabal is by looking into a reflection or water. So he's obviously had a bit of a signs moment and filled up every cup and bowl that he can find with water to try and get some signal. But like we said, that hasn't worked. So as they realise, well, there's some clues here. A naked man walks out of another room and freezes, completely startled by seeing these guys here. And it's actually John Grammaticus, and he uses his power of suggestion and tells them his name is Cato Pius, another hetman.
Is he? Where's he from? So we've got Jokers, Dancers. What's he from? It's not the Carnivales. Is he from the Clowns? He might be from the Clowns.
I thought Shaban was the Clowns.
You're right.
Is he Zanzibari? No.
No, he's not Zanzibari. Where's he from? That's going to bug me now.
I'm sure we'll come across it eventually.
Yeah.
I'm sure we will. Hopefully. I mean, there's 18,000 words in front of me here that I've written up, so that's got to be at least one of them. We'll get to it. If not, then we failed. So he's obviously putting on this charade, and he demands to know what these guys are doing there. And Boone says, look, we're here searching the room because we think Yux is hiding something. And Cato Pius says, yes, you're right, she's hiding me, hiding our affair. So they all agree to ignore what's happened here, go their separate ways, and Franco and his men leave. And from the effort of suggestion, because normally he has some sort of disguise to go along with it, but this time he was stark naked, and he had to really put some power forward, and this causes him to fall down onto the bed and have a blackout. And outside, Boone is quite angry that Honolulu sent him here on a sort of a fool's errand. But as he's walking away and getting further away from Grammaticus, he's starting to doubt what he's just seen. And he says, I don't think that was really pious. And they laugh at him and say, no, of course it was. We've just seen him completely naked. And he says, well, if that was Cato Pius, then who's that? And points at Cato Pius walking through the crowds talking to Sonica. So obviously a lot more alarm bells there, more questions and answers. And while Sonica's walking with Pius, he notices Bronzy in the crowd, and he's surprised and relieved he's alive and calls out and tries to make his way towards him. Bronzy turns and sees him, but keeps walking away. And Sonica wonders, well, should I follow him? Decides that, no, that's a bad idea. And that takes us into chapter 7. And where are we now? We're still Monlo Harbour on Nurth, and this is the evening of that day.
This is almost like, as you said, it's quite a constricted timeline right now, because it's all sort of happening on the same day. So they've had the procession, they've had everything going on. It's almost like it's a day off, but do you know what I mean? It's like there's no combat happening now. It's kind of like the Astartes meeting the Astra Militarum and the leaders, and like all levels of the military are kind of like chilling out, as it were. So you've got right at the top, like there's a feast being held for like the Primarch and Navigira, all the way down to the like the regiments themselves, the men who are all in various encampments around the harbour, no doubt, drinking various illicit homebrew.
Yeah. They're really having a bit of a final party, really, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been chucking incense on the fire, going mad on Peck.
Yeah, having a good time.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. But someone who's not having a good time is Chain. He spent all day in his office poring over the security recordings and trying to figure out who's left in this bloody note.
Yeah.
But he's not as emotional as Grammaticus. He's just trying to be very logical. He's actually enjoyed this this note, really, because it's given him a purpose and some direction to focus his energy in, because obviously he knows there's something going on in the camp and he's onto it, and he's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he gets distracted now because he's summoned to the Lord Commander's side, who, like you say, is holding a feast for the Astartes, and he has to go and deal with that. And as he leaves, he obviously hands this note to somebody and says, right, you get this run through. We'll do a bit of a DNA check on it. And if you lose it, I'll kill you. So he goes out to the big tents, and as he arrives, he briefs two of his men on the situation, and he says, you go back to the palace and continue the search. And he's pretty happy that this note's going to be the key to the mystery on this planet.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, John Grammaticus is still unconscious from passing out, and he's having dreams of being eaten by a dragon.
The dragon,
which is a bit of a recurring theme for him. He's got I think ever since coming across those lizards, like, it's playing on his mind. And he's woken up by Roxana, and then he realizes, crap, I'm supposed to be in that. I need to get to that meeting. I need to know what's going on. And he sort of gets dressed. And as he's rushing out, he says, oh, the Gene Whips were here earlier and they were looking for me, and gives her a bit of a heads up. So in the meeting, Navigira is finally sort of sat down speaking to the Astartes, who introduced himself as Alpharius.
Indeed, yep.
And he says, well, you've told me you're Alpharius, but you can't all be him. And the Primarch currently believed to be Alpharius says, no, you're right, but identity can be used as a weapon. So we present a single face to the enemy.
Yeah.
But as we're friends, I'm going to introduce a couple of people to you. So here's my first captain, Ingo Peck, and my second captain, Fias Herzog. And they step forward, take off their helmets, so we get to see three of their faces together. And obviously we've met both these two before, back in the harbour. Yep. And we're sort of told, like, if you just took a quick glance, you would think they were identical triplets. Yes. At this point. Although...
is it Grammaticus that is looking at them?
Not yet. It's Chain. He's stood off to the sides watching, and like we said, he's not nobody. He can see, because he's studying them, that the one we believe to be Alpharius he's taller than the others. His skull is shaped differently.
That's it.
It's similar to that of Horus, and his eyes are shining with sort of an eerie intelligence. And he can see, just by looking at the other two, there's enough differences there to actually, he can say they're not even related, let alone identical. So that's just sort of his skill set. And then we meet a fourth member of the Alpha Legion. He's introduced to as a common trooper here just to act as a bodyguard and a lookout for the three commanders. And his name is Omegon.
Yeah.
And Chain, he immediately detects this as a lie. And he's wondering what they're hiding. So another mystery.
Who knows? Who knows who they are?
Yeah. So then they have a bit of a philosophical debate between the Astartes and Namatjira. And they're sort of saying, well, how do you want to end this war? And Namatjira says, no, you mean how do we want to end the compliance? And they disagree, saying this is clearly a war. You can't call it anything else because you'd be disrespecting all the troops that are dying for its cause. And Namatjira says, this is compliance. This is what the Emperor has decreed. This is what the Emperor calls it. Or are you disagreeing with the Emperor? And then Herzog and Peck and Namatjira, between the three of them, they go back and forward. Namatjira is putting forth this regime as the Emperor's will, and the other two are actually openly questioning the logic.
Yeah.
But they deny that they disagree with the Emperor, but they're just saying, we don't agree with the way this is worded, which is not usual, really.
You wouldn't normally expect any Marine to talk in that manner at all. Maybe a Primarch, but not, what are effectively just captains. Could you imagine like a Blood Angel or an Ultramarine talking like that? It just wouldn't happen.
But and even then, even with a Primarch, they'd only say it to another Primarch, or maybe their closest commanders. It's not something you just say to. I mean, because it's not just Namatjira. There's other people here watching
listening.
as well.
Yeah.
So, this is obviously like signs of why the Cabal has chosen this legion, I think.
No, absolutely. I think they talk about it like whoever is playing, or whoever is Alfarius, the Alfarius in this situation, I think he does articulate that, isn't it? Like within that chapter, they agree with like discourse and explanation and like challenging, the state of things, and that they talk about the perfection, don't they? They go into perfection quite a lot in that. It's quite interesting because it's counter to the idea of the Emperor's children, who we obviously had various bits before that perfection itself can't exist because perfection is imperfect. And so it's quite an interesting counterpoint to the overall piece, to the overall piece of the rest of the Astartes that we see, and that they're all very, the Imperial truth is perfect, whereas the Alpha Legion are, that whilst they agree and that they are going to, deliver the Emperor's will, they're not going to do it without discussing it in more of a way that other legions and definitely not the Astra Militarum would ever do.
And it just shows is everybody else they get their orders and the Codex Astartes sort of example, and we'll stick to this and this is how it's done. But they'll happily question everything, and it's another reason why, like we mentioned earlier, Gilliman actually doesn't like him at all, or like this legion at all, and obviously Namatjira wishes that Gilliman was here. So they're not winning friendships at the minute with their sort of open thinking or free thinking ability. So the Lord Commander, he asks, how are we going to combat the Nurthine magic? And Alfarius says they won't combat it, they will extinguish it. And now Grammaticus has actually arrived. He is listening, or trying to listen, from the servants' area of the tent, disguised as a waiter, but he's too far away. He hasn't got his sight, so he can't quite hear what's being said. It's too noisy. He can't lip read. So he's able to sort of slip away, ditch the food, and change his disguise. And he pops on his night vision goggles, and he can see the intricate laser alarm system around the cables of the tent. And with some difficulty, he's able to maneuver around and get to a spot on the side of the tent so he can hear the conversation. And the part that he catches when he gets there is that Alfarius is explaining chaos. to Namatjira, but Grammaticus doesn't really care for his explanation of chaos, because it's basically feels like this is how you would explain it to a child, and the Alpha Legion clearly don't have the grasp of chaos that they think they do.
No, it's a very uneducated variance on chaos.
Yeah, it's like, I think the way that they explain it is the warp is scary and dangerous and there's things in it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And obviously we know a lot more. But before he can really hear too much, he feels the presence of a Lucifer Black sneaking up on him, and he can tell that this guy's got his saber drawn.
Yeah.
And he turns, and with his power, he sort of shouts out, "Stop, what are you doing, you fool, it's me." And the Lucifer replies, thinking that it's Captain Chain.
Yeah.
And John picks up on this name, and he stores that away for later on, because obviously he doesn't know who the commander actually is, but now he does. And he tells Lucifer, "Good job, go back onto your patrol. See you later." And as the Lucifer takes a couple of steps, he realizes that's not Chain, and he turns, realizing he's been tricked, and John has to act, but unfortunately this Lucifer's completely armored, and because of where they are, John can't use his ring to blow him away, so what he has to do really quickly is basically use his fist to smash the Vox unit on the Lucifer's helmet so he can't raise an alarm, and then punch him straight in the throat, crush his voice box so he can't call for help. So now this guy is muted, but he's still heavily armored.
I was going to say, this is a really good fight.
This is awesome.
Yeah, given like, as I said, it's not a combat heavy book, right? There's very little in the way of bolter porn.
Yeah.
This little section is like, it's a really well described and well written fight between the two of them. You can like, it really conveys that, one, the Lucifer Blacks are hard,
Yeah.
and two, that John Grammaticus has obviously, he's picked up a few bits and pieces during his 1,000 years of life, and you know, even with his like enhanced like hands and stuff like that, which apparently he has, so
Yeah.
even with his enhancements, he's still like smashing his fists into like high grade armor.
Yeah.
So it's brutal how this fight goes.
And it brings him back as well, because so far he's not really had any luck, and he's been a bit of a washout. And now, actually, no, there's a reason he's here. Like, he is tough.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not too bright, because he's ended up in this situation. He sort of built this through his own back. But I mean, these guys have an awesome fight, and like, yeah, if you're not going to read the book, even if you just dig this part out, like we've said in a few other videos as well, like, this is a scene worth reading. So if it wasn't for the armor, though, John probably would have killed him by punching him in the throat.
Yeah, unarmed, he would have been all over him, I think.
Yeah, but he's got like the added issue now, where he has to beat this guy to a pulp, but not trip the alarms as well.
Yeah.
Which clearly, and the Lucifer's obviously going for the alarms. It's his last sort of way to.
It's like, that's it. If
help.
My throat's been crushed and I can't communicate with anyone, I've got to set the alarms off. So he starts going straight for the trip. Well, the beams to break the beams, so the alarms go off.
Yeah, and John's like, he's punching it, he's trying to break limbs, he's smashing this guy's armor, but as he's doing it, he's mashing his hands up as well, just to do this. I think at one point the Lucifer gets him in a chokehold, and Grammaticus has to like literally smash his finger through the lens and manages to pop this guy's eye, and puts this guy to the ground, and like, again, with his bare hands, cripples him. But the guy's reaching out for the wire, so John grabs his saber and lops his arm off.
Gets his arm off.
And then quite nicely. He does say, "I'm sorry,"
then
pops the sword right through the guy's neck.
Well, but no, you see, that's the thing, is the bit that I liked is just before that.
Oh yeah.
The Lucifer Black, like with I remember it being described as like the arterial spray coming from his stump.
Yeah.
He's trying to use that to break the security beams, and like John Grammaticus is like, what do I do with this guy? Like he's I've cut his arm off, and he's now trying to spray his blood through the security beams to trip him. So that's when he's then like, right, I'm gonna have to put him down.
It's very King Arthur and the Black Knight.
It's very Black Knight. 'Tis but a scratch.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? Bleed on me? But unfortunately, like he kills this guy. He put up a good fight, and John realizes like he's buggered now. Like he's wrecked. He's got to get out. His cover's blown, and he stumbles off and heads towards the desert. Inside the tent, it didn't go unnoticed. Chains, he gets a flash in his cuff, which causes him to leave the tent, puts his helmet on, and one of his men tells him we've lost signal from somebody. And he starts a search for that. And then behind him, he hears a voice asking him if there's trouble. Chain spins round in a flash, like blink, and he's done it. And he's got his saber out, pointed up against this Astarte's chest. The Astarte says, like, I heard you were good, but I didn't know you were that good. And he realizes actually he's managed to embed his sword like half a centimeter into this guy's armor.
Cutting into the armor.
Yeah. And they sort of stare at each other, and he's again, because so Cheney's like nobody. He's good at sneaking up on people, and then he's been snuck up on as well. And the Alpha Legion's like, we like to just keep an eye on everybody.
Yeah, we like to know who we're dealing with.
Yeah, and he says that this is, so we find out this is the Astartes we believe to be Omegon, and they sort of eye each other up and then agree, look, I'm going to help. I'm here to help, so let's go and investigate. And while they're going, Chain's taking measures to avoid breaking the beams, and he notices that this Astartes is just walking through them, and no alarms are going off. So they find the body, and they basically look and realize that whoever did this actually did it with their bare hands.
Yeah.
And they see like there's blood on this guy's Vox unit. So they realize, well, this is clever. But Chain's like, I have no idea who could have done this.
There's a little bit of needling between them as well, isn't there? Like the Astartes identified as Omegon sort of like says, oh, I thought you guys were tough. And obviously Chain's like, yeah, like, you know, like, and then he sort of says, no, I know you're tough, but this was done by someone with his bare hands, and like that takes him back a bit. And I think Chain also is like questions him a bit, like, how do you know my name? Because the names of the Lucifer Blacks are never given out. So it's kind of like, you know, there's a little bit of back and forth between these two professionals, let's say.
Yeah, almost consider like in a different. If he was born on a different planet, like Chain might have made a good Alpha Legion member.
Is true. Yeah, very true.
But we'll leave them with their crime scene to work out the mysteries of that. And we go back to Sonica, who is still with Pius and his men, drinking around the campfire. I still haven't written down who Pius works for, I'm afraid.
Maybe it is the Carnivales.
It could be. And so Pius is sort of saying to him, what are you going to do now that your company's gone? And Sonica's not too sure, but he sort of says, where is Bronzy camped? And he gets pointed in the right direction, so he makes his excuses, and he says, I'm going to go use the latrine. So he wanders off into the darkness for a wee, and Boone and his men have been watching Pius because they're suspicious of him, and they're also suspicious because Sonic has turned up out of nowhere and suddenly hanging around with someone they've already got suspicions of.
That's it.
Sonica's last interaction with Boone was quite odd as well.
So it's almost like the suspicion has kind of moved across, and like actually they've kind of gone, well, actually maybe Pius isn't, you know, like he was just a name, right? Maybe he isn't that, and they go, right, well, let's go and question Sonica while he's at the latrine.
Yeah.
Because there's is it 2 or 3 of them?
There's 3 of them.
But there's Boone. I can't remember the names of the other 2. But obviously off he trots, and he's it's quite interesting because it's almost similar to when Bronzy met the Alpha Legion, and he was at the latrine. And at this time round, it's Sonica at the latrine, but it's the gene whips that are coming to find him. Yeah,
I think they're not going to have as much luck as the Astartes though.
No,
because while he's having a wee, even though he's had a bit to drink, he notices there's someone walking towards him, so he calls out, first hoping that it's Pius, but I think he realizes that it's not that simple. So he zips up, turns to walk away, and there's already somebody there blocking his path. And then immediately these 2 guys start confronting him and asking him why is he hanging out with Pius?
Yeah.
How are they friends? And they say, do you know that Pius and Roxana are sleeping together? And they're just firing questions at him. And he's trying to walk away, and one of them reaches out and grabs him. So he flips him over by the arm and flips this guy straight into the latrine pit.
That's a bad time for anyone, right?
Well, I mean, close your nose and hold your close your mouth and hold your nose. But yeah, it's still pretty grim. The other guy goes for him, but he gets an elbow in the face, and Sonica is able to run. Boone shouts out and fires a warning shot and tells him the next one's going in his head, but Sonica's not having it and keeps running. And then these headlights come on from a vehicle in front, and the door flings open, and Bronzy shouts, "Get in!" And saves him from
the gene whip.
Custody of the gene whips, and that pushes us into continuous of where we just were, into chapter 8.
Again, continuing that I suppose they started, you know, we're now 8 chapters in, they have to keep these titles going, right, to let us know where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so continuing straight on, and as I said, I think it's quite interesting, these 4 chapters, like we're looking at the moment, they have been all in this very short time span.
Yeah.
And so this one just keeps, whereas the others you had a bit of a break, this one's straight on from before, and we've got Bronzy and Sonica barreling away into, like you say, the desert or the wilderness, I suppose. I imagine it's desert, but it might not be. That might just be what I pictured in my head. But they're barreling away into the wilderness, let's say, and away from the camps and the gene whips.
Yes. And as we don't really know where they're going, nor does Sonica, so he says, "Where are we going?" And Bronzy says, "Shut up." Because we're not at the point of getting any answers yet.
No.
And
not had any of them.
No. And obviously, being like best mates, like they're both happy to see each other alive, but there's obviously something going on. And Bronzy says, like, "I'm glad that you're here, but you being here complicates things."
Yeah, you're supposed to be dead. And he was like, "Are you? What? Aren't you glad that I'm not?" And he says, "Of course I am." I'm like, your oldest mate. But yeah, this is now complicated.
Yeah, you've made my life harder now by being alive.
Yeah, and he keeps he's asking him like he's trying to ask Bronzy questions. He's just like for now, just take it as your mate Bronzy saved you. And we'll take it as what you've got to do. Oh, he says we've got to trust me and not mess this up.
Mm.
And then they where do they turn up? They turn up at some outbuilding,
like some old ruins.
Yeah, and I think it says Sonica could smell like fuel bricks. burning as they pull up.
Yeah.
And they go in around this campfire area where these fuel bricks are, and there's someone else there as well. Which is this Sherad?
Fana?
He was one of the Outramars.
Yeah, Fana. I'm sure this is him. Yeah, because before they go in, Bronzy says, "Don't say anything stupid. I'm the only one that's going to keep you alive now." And he says, "Look, they wanted you killed, but I've asked that they spare you." And that's when they go in, and there's this guy called Fana sat by the fire.
He's picking his nails with a knife, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, classic friendly welcome.
Yeah. You always know you're going to get a good conversation out of someone that's picking his nails with a knife.
Yeah. So Sonic says, "What's going on?" And Fana says, "Look, it depends. The way you answer the questions depends on what's going to happen to you."
Yeah.
And sort of says, like, "Have you told anybody about the body?" And he's hesitant and does lie. And they say, "Come on, we need you to tell us the truth." And he says, "Yes, we voxed her about it. I told Hon and Moo when I arrived because we'd already voxed her." And Fana says, "Well, how did she act? Did she know, or did she act like she didn't know?" And while he's being interrogated by this guy picking his nails with a knife, Sonica can feel in the corner of his eye something moving in the shadows. But
shadows within shadows, which again is another callback to something that Chain said, like that there are shadows within shadows. So again, all circles and callbacks and all sorts of bits and pieces going on in this book.
We don't know exactly where these guys are and who they're watching.
No, exactly.
And he says, "Oh yeah, look, Holland must have denied it. She was too busy, or she'd forgot. There was a lot going on." And Bronzy says, "No, she didn't know. The messages were intercepted by them. And when he delivered the body to them, they killed Shaban because the shrapnel he'd got to his neck was actually." It wasn't just shrapnel; it was nerfing bone, and he was becoming corrupted by it. And Sonic is sort of being overwhelmed by what he's being told, and sort of snaps, pulls his pistol out, and points it straight at Fana, demanding to be told what's going on.
Yeah, just someone tell me.
And then, in response, Fana reaches down, pulls his shirt up, and shows his hip, and shows him.
I think before he does that, Bronzy punches him.
No.
Oh, does that cut? That comes in a minute. Oh,
it's like
okay. Yeah.
This is a distraction. So he shows him his hip, and we see here, Fana's got the same brand that was on that body from before, and they say, look, it was one of our agents undercover with the dancers.
Yeah.
And Sonica snaps. He actually pulls the trigger, but as he does so, Bronzy punches him in the head, so the shot goes wide. And then Fana is obviously not too impressed with about to be shot. Kicks him in the guts, and
knocks the air out of him.
Yeah, and he goes to kill him, and Bronzy says no. And as they're arguing, another voice says, "Why don't we just show him the rest?"
Yeah, we're taking him this far.
Yeah.
If
he objects, we'll kill him later.
Yeah.
So they help him up, and Bronzy then shows Sonica that he's also got the same brand as well.
The mark of the is this where it's revealed the mark of the Hydra?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So basically, literally, an Alpha Legion Astarte steps out of the shadows and says, "This is the mark of the Hydra. We bestow this mark upon friends that we can trust."
Yeah.
And says, "We want to be friends with you." And Sonica says, "Well, stop lying to me then." And he asks, "Stop lying to me. Tell me your name." So the Astarte says, "I am Librarius," and Sonica just says, "Well, just kill me." And in return, the Astartes asks for Fana's blade. So another Librarius. Is it the same one? Is it the Librarius, or who knows?
I was going to say, we potentially find out who it might be in the next bit. But yeah, right now it could be, who could it be? It's Alfarius, right? They're all Alfarius.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, Sonic has had enough. Alfarius is back at the camp meeting with Namatjira. He knows that he's not being told the truth. I think he's had enough. He's a bit like Grammaticus. It's too much effort.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. So we then go from that one confusing scene back to the meeting between Namatjira and another Alfarius.
Mm-hmm.
And Alfarius says that he wants all the available astro-telepaths assigned to him because we're going to need them in order to combat the chaotic powers of the Nurthine. And he states that the Geno-Chiliad will be the front line as the psychic power of the Uxors will be useful in the coming battle.
Yeah.
And while they're having this meeting, Chain comes back and whispers into Namatjira's ear, who then in turn ends the meeting with Alfarius. And as he's leaving, Alfarius tells him that compliance will be won within a week.
Yep.
So they part ways outside. Chain briefs Namatjira about the dead Lucifer, and he says, "Okay, well, what do you think about that meeting with the Astartes?" And Chain says, "Every single one of them was lying." So the three Astartes leave the tent, and they meet up with the fourth. And we now, I think, officially we know that Herzog and Peck are Herzog and Peck.
Yeah, we know those two. That's all understood. And we knew, is it someone else was standing in, is it Ranko was standing in for Omegon?
No, so, well, his first name might be Ranko, so it's Sheed?
Yeah, that's Ranko. Yeah,
okay,
so he's captain of the Terminators.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Sheed Ranko, yeah, so you're right, yep.
So
he's been standing for Omegon.
Omegon, yeah, because he's big and Omegon's big. And they say
he's big because he's the leader of the Terminators.
Yes, and
That's
then
why he's big.
do they say? Is that where they say? Yeah, but his size is useful for standing in for Omegon or Alfarius because they're both big.
Yeah, because the Astartes that we thought was Alfarius is actually Omegon.
Yes. And then they say, "Where is Alfarius?"
Yeah.
He's in the desert tying up loose ends.
Yeah.
So does that mean that Sonic is actually speaking to Alfarius?
There's a good chance. We don't know.
We don't know. Could be. Don't know.
Yeah. Cool. So that brings us to chapter 9, and we're going to hold it there because it's another 4 chapters down. And otherwise, we'll be going on for another hour at least. We'll try and keep these as short as we can. Cool. So, any answers? I don't think so. We've got
yet.
A potential location for Alfarius, but we don't know. So we will leave it there and make that part 2, and then we'll finish off part 1 in part 3 of our series of Legion, which is quite fitting to make that confusing as the book. So unless you've got any other parting words of wisdom.
Not for the not for where we're up to in Legion. Not right now. I only other parting words would be obviously the usual admin. So like, subscribe, share, because it helps us out. If you wanna buy us a pot of paint, you can do on Patreon, of course. And if you are buying any hobby stuff, use our link because it helps us out. Obviously, you don't have to do any of that. Don't feel obliged. But anything you do decide to do, if you do go for it, we'll go back into the channel anyway, because that's what we're using it for. So I think other than that, I am Alfarius, I think is the best parting word.
Yeah, I am also Alfarius.
As always, we would like to thank you for listening to our Iron and Ceramite podcast. If you liked us, then you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and any other good podcast services. Just remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.